we now have a short opportunity to bring all the panelists in and see if there are any questions from the floor. I'm really looking to the attendees to see if there are any questions, or if anyone wants to raise something very more generally. I don't see anything particularly on the floor. Very good, Michael. Thanks for the support. Perhaps a quick chat on what you might expect to happen over the next decade. That's a great question. Should we go around the panel? From my point of view, Paul Twan is in the top left-hand corner, so you get the least thinking time.
The least thinking time, okay. So what's happening in the next decade? With the risk of repeating what I said 10 years ago, when we actually worked together in Apache, or is that even long? That's 13 years ago, where we already targeted the 1 terabit per second system. The main difference that I see is that traditional semiconductor companies are really serious about using optical and photonic technology, becoming part of their mainstream, let's say, R&D, but also development and manufacturing projects, where we really move out of the lab into the fab. The promise of addressing shorter distance communication with photons instead of electrons is really happening. And I think one of the rate limiters is the amount of people that can actually contribute. And that's what we target to support with lowering access barriers. And when there is more capacity online driven by this datacom surge, then sensing, biophotonics, imaging, you all see this, let's say, semiconductor techniques being used for other integrated optical and photonic systems. So, Michael, when we meet again 10 years from now, I think that it's not photonics everywhere yet, but I think it's photonics in much more places than we see it today.
I think that's a great positive message for this conference. Very nice. Thanks, Twan. I'll go across to the right. Martin, you're the next in my firing line.
Yeah, I think I agree with Twan in the sense that it's not only telecommunication that will drive innovation, and especially in other domains where volumes are higher, like in sensing, we will see a lot of higher volumes, which will also help drive innovation. So that's one thing. Definitely, if you see the presentations from previous days, also, for example, Rockley was telling about how the volume in sensing will surpass datacom in a few years from now. The other thing that I see is standardization. So if you look at the electronics industry, it's very mature today, and the real acceleration happened as soon as there was some standardization in for example, compact models. So I expect the same to happen for photonics. It's still a very young field, and there are already today 100 ways that you can model a simple component like attraction copper. And only when you see some standardization happening, then it will happen for the foundries to be able to start fitting models and to start providing standardized models, which will then again accelerate the market and make it easier to build circuits. So that's definitely something that I see happening as well. This will, of course, require a lot of automation, and yeah, we'll see what it brings in the future. I'm very excited.
Thank you very much, Martin. I was going to turn to Carlos, but he's disappeared from my screen. Is that true for everyone? Yeah. Okay. So Sven, you get the other difficult spot. Twan had the least thinking time. You had the most, but on the other hand, other people have probably said the obvious things.
No, I mean, I agree with Twan and Martin. I think optics, the way we have done optics and transceivers, you know, is a very manual way of how we build things. So from a semiconductor perspective, you know, if you look at the volumes, if you look at the levels of efficiency, if you look at the level of maturity when it comes to simulation tools, software standardization, you know, if you look from the semiconductor perspective on the optics field, I mean, we're in an R&D. You know, we are not in production. We do R&D type volumes, if at all. And so I think that the big trend is that this is going to change, right, dramatically. So we're going to need to standardize not only on paper in terms of IEEE standards or F standards. We also need to standardize on simulation tools, on manufacturing processes, on just standard ways how to test, how to manufacture parts, and to enable an ecosystem of contract manufacturers and ODMs, etc., and to have companies focus more on the chip design and not mess around or deal around with individual ways how to package it, because this has to be standardized. And the more we consolidate and standardize on that, the more we consolidate also for equipment manufacturers to be more efficient, so they can use the same piece of equipment across all the different types of applications and parts. And it's better for simulation tools, EDA providers. It's better for everyone to standardize on that, and then compete not so much on the packaging level or on the manufacturing level, but more to compete on the actual chip design. And this is how a semiconductor works. And from there, we're then achieving the great cost reductions that the semiconductor industry has demonstrated greatly how successful that could be. And then from there, we see certainly moving photonics, silicon photonics, really move into sensor, into consumer products, into all the things we always dreamt of in the past, but it never really materialized. So we are still in this kind of Formula One section where the latest and greatest is being used, but it has never really been funneled down to the lower levels. And I see this really now start happening in the next couple of 10 years. Michael said 10 years, so say 10 years.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. Again, an optimistic view of going from Formula One to Fords, is it? Something like this, so the scale of things go up. Michael says, great answers, everyone. And I don't see any other questions. So I think given that lots of tummies are rumbling and lunch calls us, I think we'll bring this panel to a close. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers for really nice presentations, which obviously took substantial effort, and also for keeping to time. All the attendees for participating, bearing with us when we had a bit of teething problems at the start, and especially those people who asked questions. Finally, Emma and the rest of the exhibition team for organizing this market focus in such challenging circumstances. And I wish you all a really productive conference, and hopefully we can meet in the flesh in less than a year from now, if that's possible. Thanks, everyone.